Greetings and welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be looking at in-memory user authentication and session persistence with Angular, Heroku, and CodeSandbox. Please like, share, and subscribe, and most importantly, reach out to me in the comment section for any help, tips, and suggestions. So in modern web development, it definitely when dealing with login and sessions and keeping users logged in and protecting their data, HTTP has advanced a lot, which I mean is still the same. However, browsers have a lot of protection put in place, and this was something I was experiencing when working on some of the projects for my company. And today I wanted to show how we can go about providing a great user experience in a secure way, and we could do that with in-memory session persistence. So first we're going to go ahead and start the Angular application, download the front end here. Definitely want to give a shout out to down-git. It's always nice when I don't have to download the whole Git repository to present an example. I could download a part of it. We're going to go ahead and download this URL for down-git. We want to, we want to go ahead and start up our application. We want to cd npm install, cd into our Angular app. That command does not exist, and we want to go ahead and run this application. So now while it builds, right, we want to go ahead and open up these files. We want to go ahead and search for these files, right, in our project application, right, and then also if we ever mess up, we always have Angular app start. We're going to open up these files. So now, great, refresh token and access tokens. Refresh tokens keep the session alive, right? And the access token allow the user to interact with their personalized content coming from the server. In order to implement this, right, first we need the user credentials, right? So we need to accept this by logging in, right? So we copy and paste that code in our login directive. Right, so what's important is with credentials. This allows the browser to provide us with that refresh token. What we're going to do with that refresh token is we're going to place it as an HTTP only cookie. Without the with credentials attribute in modern browsers cannot place any cookies on the client's browser. Right. So now, since we are sending the credentials over, we need a way for us to process and retrieve it in the backend. In incorrect password, we want to go ahead and paste this code, and the 401 status means that the request is unauthorized, meaning that the credentials were invalid and the server doesn't know who we are, and in addition, the server is not going to provide us with any personalized content. So we need to validate. We validate like so with this code. And let's be more complex in the organizations that you work with. Definitely a point I wanted to highlight is the tries, because it might not be always that the hacker is trying to hack. Maybe it's a bad internet connection or another issue. So definitely in development, you want to give a static value so that you could test against it. Come production, you always want to change it up because you want to give fate a chance to get the user to keep their session alive. At the same time, you want to make a slim window or the window slimmer for any hackers to pass through. So once we have validated, we want to provide access or refresh tokens like so. So in return the tokens, we paste these code. What we have is that the refresh tokens should last longer because this is required to keep the user session alive. What we have for access tokens, we want to keep these short, right? Every time these access tokens expire, we use the refresh token to get a new access token. Because what's important is that content, right? The login session just keeps the session alive, but to actually do anything meaningful for these hackers, they need an access token. We want to keep it short because we already have that refresh token. Access token is going to be placed in memory, right, which is very difficult for these hackers to get. The refresh token, right, is going to persist our session. That's an HTTP, right? It might be easier for hackers to get, however, they're going to be able to need that access token. right? So now also I provided that return in our return object was one to provide some metadata, right? Because say for example the hackers gain access to that refresh token, we want to be able to perform a lookup and we need some metadata. I keep it simple as just asking for a username, but you might ask for a UUID in your production application or a series of metadata just to uniquely identify that refresh token against the user so that the backend application doesn't accept any refresh token even if it's valid and provide information to hackers that we won't want to provide. In other words, we basically want to keep refresh tokens unique to the user, and our application should be looking for that metadata in our backend when we want to validate that refresh token, right? But right now we want to go ahead and send over our refresh token and metadata as cookies, right? HTTP only cookies. So we're going to open up our Tornado server and copy and paste this code here as I already see it. And HTTP only means that those cookies cannot be accessed via document.cookie via JavaScript. And then most importantly, right, when we deal with credentials, right, we want to set up these headers like so, which I have copy and pasted here already, which is very nice. Definitely, if we click on this link, this is known as cores, right? So node.js, that backend has the cores module, so that's where that comes from. Whenever you think of HTTP security, always think of cores, right? So now with our Python backend code ready to go, we want to go ahead and start the Python backend like so. We want to make sure that we are in the proper directory according to the commands, and then we want to run Python Tornado server like so. Right now we want to go ahead and try and log in. I always like to open up my developer tool, see my application here, right? I'm just going to clear out these values, and you can see when we log into our application, right, we are going to see that these cookies populate like so, right? We are at our home page, right? And now we have our token as well as some token metadata like so. However, we need to persist the session. Say if we go ahead and refresh the page, right, we are sent back to the login screen. That's a terrible UX experience. So what we need to do is we need to create a request in the front end right before the application loads to see if we are logged in. We're going to use that refresh token that indicates that we are logged in, therefore persistent the session. We're going to head over to our login directive, head over to the code that requires us to get a new access token, and we're going to paste this code, right? What's important about this when we're performing that refreshing step is that this is usually supposed to be a GET request. However, bypassing this by providing the content type is text plain, we also bypassed it when we first set our user credentials so that we could receive that refresh token, right? When we provide for that with credentials true, it only allows for a GET request. So to override that, we provide content type text is plain. So now we are sending over our refresh token to the backend for validation. We have to retrieve and process it in our backend. So we're going to go ahead, open up template.py, copy this paste like so to help us process that refresh token. And always in your routes, right, sometimes you want that token to be required, so you always want to provide that in a decorator function. You don't want to try to implement that code every single time. Definitely want to use a decorator function, right, so you don't have to write more code, right? Decorator functions takes functions as your arguments, right, and now transforms and allows you to add additional logic, right? Acts like a regular function. Right, so if that refresh token is valid against the user, right, we could go ahead and provide another access token like so. We're going to go ahead and return to the front end, make sure our back end refreshed like so. Return to our front end, log in again. Right, and now this time when we reload the page, right, we are immediately stay on the home page like so. Right. So now the last part of this lab is production. Even though we're not going to deploy, what we want to go ahead and do is head over to our front end production URL, right? And definitely in your projects or in your labs, right, you probably use Firebase, you probably use GitHub, and see how things work. But I wanted to show you that in production, that these headers are once again important. So definitely read upon cores if you want to get your applications to work in production. And then most importantly, in Tornado and other applications that might be different, you want to provide for the same site attribute, right? The same site attribute, right, there should definitely be more non-general. Here I just provide same site is none just to get the application to work, but definitely read upon it more in course to see how it applies to your application. And then when you're changing the same site value, you want to provide secure is true, and this is actually required, right? And then also thing I wanted to provide is that when we have secure cookies, when you're using this method in Python, I'm not exactly sure how to get it to work. There's probably another level of logic in Tornado that I need to know about. However, when we go ahead and provide it like so, we won't be able to see the cookie, and it's actually secure in that fashion. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to try and log in, and then I'm sure we're going to reach out to our backend application, which is on Heroku, right? We're able to log in. However, in application, we don't get that cookie, wherever the session is able to persist itself. Right? And then so that is the end of the lab. And before I end the video, I just wanted to go ahead and give a shout out to CodeSandbox, and that's where I was able to host my front end application. It was very simple for the setup. All I needed to do was build npx ng build, and then in this directory, I just installed CodeSandbox as my known modules, and then I ran a simple command npx CodeSandbox, and then / indicating the current directory. It uploaded and it was able to host it like so. And I would like to show you what that looks like. Right, so here it looks like on the so here it is what it looks like on the interface, which is really nice. And then I also wanted to give a shout out to Heroku, and Heroku is the service, as many of you are aware, for my backend Python application. Together, this really made for a good production deployment. So once again, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and most importantly, reach out to me in the comment section for any help, tips, and suggestions.